and Craig Smoak.
Texas Tech was good, and then they came to Waco and beat Baylor and handed the Bears their first loss after a 15-0 start, and then jumped right on top of the national map. I know just, 2 or 3 years ago they had that team in the championship and all that, but that kind of set a message. Then they beat Kansas, and they host Baylor tonight inside their big arena, and we're joined by Carlos Silva, Lubbock Avalanche Journal. I can't imagine anything can ever be fever pitch like it was with Chris Beard in Texas in town, but are they lit up right now already, Carlos, for tonight?
I would certainly say they're a little revved up, and I think it helps the fact that they beat TCU at home and the fact that they're undefeated at home. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the game is sold out. So I would imagine the fervor for this fan base is starting to get to a fever pitch, just in the sense that March is looming. They kind of realize, there's still a chance at a Big 12 regular season title if things kind of go their way. Obviously, a lot of things have to kind of turn, but certainly getting a win over Baylor would be a huge help for them in that sense.
What do you think? How do you think they approach Baylor tonight, knowing that Baylor will have to play a different style with the injuries they have, particularly Jonathan Tchamwa out?
Well, I asked Coach Adams about that. He said the biggest thing is they may not kind of play through the inside out, and they may be playing through the perimeter. They've got a lot of guards, like a LJ Cryer, if he's able to play following his injury. He's one of their better three-point shooters. You obviously have James Akinjo as well, Adam Flagler. I mean, you can go down the list with all the type of guards that Baylor possesses that can shoot the three. And not only that, but then you got some bigs that can shoot threes too. So I think that's the other thing that Mark is very, very cautious about when he talks about allowing three-pointers with his defense. I know that the big one that really kind of hurt them was going on the road to Oklahoma. Then all of a sudden you have Emoji Gibson, go for 30. That's certainly something he doesn't want to have happen tonight, but I think that the guys will be locked in. But I think one important factor, and I'm sure you guys have already talked about it, but if Kevin McCullar's able to play, is he going to be at 100%? I doubt it, but certainly he would be available. If he is available, I certainly think he would help with that perimeter defense.
Well, Carlos, I was going to ask you about McCullar, but outside of him, because you just updated that, how is Tech health-wise outside of McCullar?
Well, after I tweeted this, a lot of Tech fans came after me, but they're about as healthy as they've been so far. And then right after I tweeted that, Kevin McCullar steps on Jamie Dixon's foot. So obviously I'm not the best luck charm for the Texas Tech fans, and I'm sure that they'll be happy when I mention this again. But, I mean, when you look at what Texas Tech has had to go through, Terrence Shannon missed in the first 3 games because he went to the NBA draft, came back. They had to make sure everything was good for him. Then he still had the ankle injury, back spasms, and then, of course, Kevin McCullar got hurt. You've had Malik Wilson out with a minor knee surgery. He seems to be okay in terms of, just his confidence going to the basket. His passing ability is finally getting put on display. I think that's certainly something that Mark Adams has been looking for, is a true point guard, which is what Kevin McCullar's been playing. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing to kind of watch tonight, is who's going to be the guy that holds the ball, who's going to be the guy that is going to lead our team in assists, because that's what Kevin McCullar's led them in so far this year.
All right. Now, what did that win in Waco mean, in your opinion, for the confidence of who they are now and who they've been since?
Oh, it's funny you asked that, because I asked Mark that, but he certainly thought it was a confidence factor of we can win on the road, because that was one of the big things, is can you win on the road? And they won on the road. Not only that, but they snapped a 21-game home winning streak for Baylor, which was something that was obviously mentioned throughout the country. And not only that, but then he even mentioned after the win at West Virginia, he said his team kind of realized that you just have to keep on playing good defense. Don't play outside of what you should in terms of the game plan for the specific team, and you will eventually get yourself back. You will, no matter what the circumstances are, whether that's Terrence Shannon going down, coming back, scoring 7 points in that second half to help beat West Virginia, or if you're down 15 twice in the first half and you just chip away, continue to play defense and keep yourself in there. I think that's the biggest thing that Texas Tech has learned, is that they're never out of a game if they play good defense. But the thing is you just have to play almost close to perfect to kind of do that. And certainly if you look back at the Oklahoma loss, that's one where they got close, but then all of a sudden you have one bad defensive possession, you give up a 3, and then everything's kind of back to what it was. Whereas Baylor, they were able to play, I want to say, as close to perfect. They had guys step up like a Davian Warren, didn't have any points, made 2 clutch free throws.
Yep.
Adonis Arms had one of his better games. And then this is also a game, I think we kind of alluded to it, guys, but Terrence Shannon didn't play in that first game either. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that Texas Tech has been figuring out. And I think one of the big things is if they are healthy or getting healthier, how are guys going to figure out the roles that were probably going to be assigned to them early on in the year, but they've had to change because of all these injuries or guys being out to either COVID or kind of all those other things.
How big is this 2-game stretch for them, Baylor and Texas, as far as emotions and really putting their stamp on who they could be in March?
I think certainly the team that they could be in March is in a question they could answer. I think certainly they want to try and stay in that 3rd seed because I think every team that is in Texas is vying for that the Fort Worth spot. Texas Tech would certainly enjoy that because the last time they made a run to the NCAA tournament, they did go through Fort Worth. They had a huge crowd there. And I think they do enjoy playing in front of a rowdy atmosphere, especially when you think you're typically on the road. But if you got some fans really hollering for you, that just energized them. And I think that really pushed them in those first 2 games of that NCAA tournament run where maybe they weren't playing to their best, but the fans kind of got them through that. But I think from an emotional standpoint, I think it's going to be good for them just to get over that. Okay, we've already played Chris Beard. Now it's just going on the road, and can we get a big road win? I think this Baylor win is going to be huge just because of the fact that if you're able to get a season sweep over Baylor, that's good. But I certainly think getting the road victory at Texas is going to be a little bit more, noticeable from the country because a road win is a little bit more than a home win. But certainly, I'm sure Mark Adams would say, just like every other player, they want to win both.
Yeah, you'd love to ask Texas Tech fans, who would you rather beat, Baylor tonight at home or win at Texas? And I think the Chris Beard factor still is there. So that would be interesting if you could only win one of those two. And hell, they're good enough to win both. And again, you got to be careful with both. I remember Bryson Williams seemed to be clutch. You mentioned Warren. I was going to bring him up, the 2 free throws at the end. I thought Bryson Williams, arms posterized Matthew Meyer on a dunk, if I remember as well. And one thing that stood out to me as well is Tech shot 50% from the field in that game against which is also supposed to be, like Tech, a very stingy defense that's hard to score on. So that was also something they did incredibly well.
Oh, no, absolutely. And if you really think about it, you look at what they were able to do when they won the national title. They were using that side no-middle defense that Mark Adams was trying to perfect. It's just they had the guys to run it. And, of course, as you all know, a lot of those guys are playing in the NBA. So you had a lot of talent at the guard position last year. And certainly you still have that talent now. But as you all know, injuries can kind of change things, as you mentioned with the Chamba Chachua, especially a season ender. It's one of those things. And not only that, but then is L.J. Cryer going to play? Because L.J. Cryer played a huge role in that previous game. He had 10 points, and he had a couple threes there. That could open up the Mark Adams defense and maybe help Baylor, spread them out a little bit more if he is able to play. And I think those, just along with having guys that can step up, I think that's the one thing that Texas Tech needs to figure out right now is, do you have a go-to scorer right now? I would have to say it's Bryson Williams right now just because they feel so comfortable with him. He's been a consistent scorer once the Big 12 conference play started. But I think you're trying to look and see if Terrence Shannon can get back to that slasher form to where he gets to the basket, draws a foul, makes the free throw, and then all of a sudden the other team is trying to, try and figure out, okay, well, we can't get into foul trouble. And then all of a sudden you have Bryson Williams who's able to score and do almost the same thing from the low block. And not only that, but then he's one of their better 3-point shooters, which is something Mark Adams was wondering if they could do. I think that's really the biggest thing for Tech is they've got to figure out their roles, but the health factor is certainly going to be a huge thing for Texas Tech going forward.
Lincoln Floyd in the chat room said, I'm a Tech alum here, 100%. If I could only win one of the next two, beat Texas and Austin. Again, I'm not saying they won't win both, but that's from a Tech guy as well. Craig?
This is not basketball. I guess it kind of is basketball related in some ways, Carlos, but the Matador Club. Tell us about Texas Tech entering the NIL collective business, or I guess not Texas Tech directly, right? But Texas Tech alums getting involved in the collective side of things, which has become quite popular now in college athletics.
Oh, no, absolutely. And then you look at the new agreement that enables Tech players to just profit from jersey sales. I think that's going to be a huge thing because I know that's something I'm sure even Baylor fans have been clamoring for is, well, why can't we get some of their jerseys? And now this possibility, along with the NIL Matador Club that you kind of mentioned, is going to allow Tech fans to not only support the program, but then help some of these players that do opt into these NIL deals. But I think the one thing about the NIL collective is just that they're just trying to stick with the kind of what we were talking about, the race to be great, if you will. At one time it was who has the best facility, who has the most things with their facilities. Now it's what can you offer with NIL? Is it trying to get the best press? Is it trying to, find a good number to where a kid feels like, okay, I'm going to be helped while I'm in college, and not only that, but then, make my brand throughout this whole time. And I think that's the biggest thing. And not only that, but then it's by a bunch of Tech supporters like Cody Campbell and Terry Fuller, John Sellers, and Gary Peterson, among others. They're guys that have been supporting Tech forever, and I think this is something that it's just going to show that all the supporters of Tech are really coming together and realizing they can do something special if all of their minds are put together and they realize that there's one objective, which is to make sure that Tech is at the forefront of athletics, and they certainly have done that over the last couple of years and even the last couple of months with some of the donations that have been coming.
Carlos, it should be fun, and obviously that place, as you mentioned, will be packed like sardines. And at a fervor pitch, they beat Baylor in Waco, 65-62. Baylor had a shot, wasn't a very good one, I think, by Akinjo. He had some pressure around him in 65-62. And now, seemed like that game's forever ago. Baylor was 15-0 at the time. Doesn't it seem, and I guess it was. It wasn't like last week, but it did seem like that was just a long, long time ago, and so much has happened since then.
Well, heck, I'm pretty sure you guys remember back in the day when Iowa State was ranked and undefeated as well, right?
Yeah, I do remember that. And that was that was a while ago now at this point. Yeah, absolutely.
All of our Iowa State listeners and viewers just hung up on us. That's way to go, Carlos. No, I'm kidding. Great stuff. We appreciate all your knowledge and insight. Enjoy the night. I know you will. It should be a hell of a game. ESPN2, 8 o'clock tip, Texas Tech hosting Baylor. Tech trying to stay unbeaten, wanting to stay unbeaten at home. And no question, Mark Adams in the discussion for men's basketball coach of the year, not just in the Big 12, but also possibly around the country as well.
Yeah, I got a little coaching news I want to get to here in a second. And I know Carlos mentioned it there, and this brings me to something I've been wanting to say for a while. I really hope that, and this is not like directly on Tech, I want to make that very clear, but he rehashed it in my head when he mentioned a certain name. I really hope we don't get to start to know names of people who are like the behind the scenes NIL people. Like, I know from time to time we're going to hear it, but like, I don't want them to be something like in the grand scheme of college sports. You know what I don't want to talk about them like I talk about Mac Rhodes or the Baylor starting quarterback or the quarterback's coach. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't want to.
I don't want to hear. I don't want to know booster names. Well, look, you know what I mean?
Now, Nevin Shapiro was running a pyramid scheme, but I don't want to know the other Nevin Shapiros.
Right, the guys who aren't on the forefront. Like, I know there's certain Baylor donors that we're gonna know, like some of them just because, hey, their name's on the stadium. Like, that's going to happen. But in terms of, like, working NIL deals, I don't want to know any of that. I don't want any part of that kind of deal.
I never even thought about that. I now that you mention it, I think that's...
Like, the collectives and stuff's cool, but I don't want to start getting to know, like, individuals involved that are just basically big alumni. You know what I'm saying?
What you don't want to do is